Hey y'all, welcome back to the latest Odyssey update. This is where the videos are going to start spanning a lot more days as I show you smaller clips from multiple rides. As we progress through our riding journey, there's going to be a lot of repetition, and so I'm going to be mindful of that and try to share you the most interesting content from each of our rides. In this video, I rode him in the Western saddle for the first time, and I also taught him to drag. So this was his first time wearing a back cinch. I had already lunged him with just the saddle without the back cinch, and I put it on. I'm having him yield his hindquarters and back up so he can feel it before he starts to move, because sometimes when they start moving it can surprise them, so I wanted to prepare him, and he didn't care about it at all. I wanted to ride him in the Western saddle because I felt like it was time for him to start riding in a saddle. I felt like we could make some more progress that way. And he didn't care about cantering with the back cinch either. So while I'd gotten on him from the ground plenty of times, I'd never gotten on him with the saddle on his back, so I did some quick prep to make sure he'd be ready for the feeling of my weight in the stirrups and slightly pulling the saddle on his back. We started out the same way we start all our rides, with some loose rein walking and a bit of work on steering, stopping, and backing. Part of the reason I wanted to ride him in the saddle was to see if he still exhibited the same behavior that he did when I rode him bareback, and interestingly, he didn't do it as much. For a while, it became a habit for him whenever we were walking or working on shoulder yields or moving sideways, or just standing there and resting, but eventually it went away entirely. When I asked him to trot, he almost wanted to pop in the canter straight away, which I thought was interesting. But I reassured him he just had to trot. I chose to ride him in a Western saddle because I'm more at home in a Western saddle, and I really felt like I'd be able to sit back and give him his head and let him open up and start to really move out, because I feel like that was some of his issue, is that he was having trouble moving out. So I wanted to be able to just sit back and encourage any and all forward motion from him. You can hear him trip a little there when he went out of the frame, and then he got a bit sassy. But I felt like this helped us a lot with moving out to the right. He really got to open up his stride, and I didn't have to worry about clinging on him bareback. With a horse that likes to stop as much as Odyssey, I don't ask him for the stop very much. He was nervous because he saw someone riding out of the frame, and so that's what he was looking at. So when I asked him for a walk transition, he went straight to halt, and I had to encourage him to walk again. And then because he got distracted, I asked him to do something else to get his focus back on me. He really put his attention back on me and stopped worrying about the person riding a horse, so he got a nice reward, and we ended that ride there. The next day, I decided to finally teach him how to drag. That had been on my list for a while. I think it's a super useful skill that every horse should know how to do. I think it helps them not panic if they ever get caught up in a bind, and it's really handy for horses to know. So I started very basic with just a lead rope dragging on the ground. He's had a drag lane on before when I first got him, so this wasn't an issue. I like to do things like this to teach my horses to get super comfortable with ropes all around and over them. I see so many horses get tangled up in lunge lines or have their bridles fall halfway off if the rider falls off, and horses panic because they're not used to having ropes all over them and on their legs, and so I want my horses to be ready for anything. I started off by dragging this one jug where he could see it.
Zephyr was able to take the lead off, and he just followed it.
My horse, I think, is a bit more reactive to things he thinks are snakes on the ground.
But that's like Zephyr's instinct, though, is to like go after it.
Then he got to see it dragging beside him.
It sometimes gets a little awkward.
I know, it's like, how do I coordinate this?
I don't know. Can you pull on it and change the length of it?
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah. This way I can flip it up so it's like, do I stop? He was very good. Definitely a little bit concerned, as you can see by his ears and checking back on it now and then, but he was really brave.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't mind that his instinct is to want to stop and think through when something's scary like that. If a rider ever were to get hung up in the stirrup and dragged, I want him obviously to stop and not drag his rider. So I don't want him to think if something scary happens, he immediately needs to keep going forward. So I like that he's thinking through this, but I am encouraging him that it is okay to have something dragging. The main purpose is that if he feels something dragging, he doesn't immediately freak out and bolt, because that could really hurt someone.
Now, see if you can pull that milk jug up there. There you go. Now make him walk forward with it about like right there. Yeah, see that's a little bit of a boo-boo spot.
It's also really good for them to be able to have something bouncing and making noise on the saddle.
But it's like, what if you got drugged?
It's like another stallion going to bite his forelegs.
Or I've had a plastic bag fly up in me in a dressage test.
Never fun.
Thing is, you can't prepare your horse for any and every situation that could possibly happen to them, but you can teach them how to think through when they do get afraid so that their first response isn't to panic.
Oh, good boy. Woo! Good boy. You know, like, it is a little bit they have to figure it out, but the same breath, if he was to break in too, you could pull that thing off, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of like about it, is it's not just,
Not secured on there.
woo! He's like, I'm playing soccer.
He's thinking so good boy. He's thinking about striking and he's trying so hard not to.
The other nice thing about the milk jug is it's soft. It's not going to hurt him if it bangs his legs a little bit.
Good boy.
He's like, it keeps hitting me.
I don't like it.
We spent the same amount of time on the other side, but this was the gist of it. It was pretty much the same. Odyssey was really good and very brave for this. On day 41, it was my birthday, and my mom and grandmother had come to visit me, and they were able to get some footage of our ride. So I started out teaching him to drag the tire. I thought it would be nice for him to have some weight on the saddle, pulling on the breast collar so he could get used to that feeling. It was kind of hard to arrange the tire where he would actually be dragging it, but I finally found the perfect spot to put it where he could drag it around the round pin, and it was a lot heavier than I was expecting. And he was really good. He honestly didn't care too much. It's also good for them to be able to drag something backwards, as that can scare some of them. We started out our ride with a little goofing around and desensitizing. I just wanted him to be able to go on a loose rein while I wiggled around and touched his butt and made some noise up there. It's really good for them to be used to all sorts of noise and movement on their back. I've honestly ridden colts with way more miles than him that were still spooking if you talked to them on their back. So I think it's very important for them to be broke to all that from very early on. And we did a little bit of work on moving the shoulder over. This is where I got a nice crossover step. And working on having smoother downward transitions where we aren't thinking about stopping right away but can just kind of flow down into the walk. And we were playing around with softness and picking himself up, moving off the inside leg, and he was starting to look pretty broke at this point. I was having a lot of fun riding him and getting him even softer and softer. This was a nice, smooth, downward transition, exactly what I'm looking for an English horse.
Nice.
and just finishing up with letting him relax on a loose rein and some more desensitizing. Another important skill is to be able to lean over and pick something up or put something down on a fence, so starting working on that skill. That was a great ride. He gave me a good little birthday present, and that was about the extent of our Western riding, as we soon moved on to the English saddle and started riding out in the open again. Thank y'all so much for watching. Sorry this video has taken me a minute to put out. I'm working on the next few videos already, so hopefully I'll get you guys caught up to date on Odyssey's progress soon.